So the topic is recapitalization of public sector banks. The recapitalization is described as a strategy of enhancing the financial base of an entity to overcome a rough financial situation or to enhance its financial health. From the practical angle, capital is the money put by the owners for the running of the enterprise. Hence, recapitalization is the venture of the owner or shareholders to make the firm financially strong. The Indian government and the country's central bank are at the final stage of drawing up a plan to infuse rupees 2.11 trillion capital into public sector banks, which roughly have a 70% share of the assets of Indian banking industry, consisting of 21 public sector banks, 26 private sector banks, 43 foreign banks, and 56 regional banks. Of this, 1.35 trillion will come from the sale of so-called recapitalization bonds, and the remaining rupees 76,000 crore will be through budgetary allocation and fundraising from the markets. Is this big money? Yes, it indeed is. It is huge. Some 1.3% of India's gross domestic product in the past 31 years between 1985 to 86 and 2016 to 17, the government had infused much less, some rupees 1.5 trillion in a state owned banks. This puts in place the enormity of the latest bank recapitalization plan. What is interesting is the present government and the Reserve Bank of India do not want to treat this as a dole, as was in the past. They seem to be keen that banking redeems and recapitalization must go hand in hand. We are not aware of the process and the basis followed in the first 2 decades of bank recapitalization, but in the period between 2008 to 9 and 2016 to 17, when the government infused cumulatively rupees 1,18,724 crore in public sector banks, money was there for the asking. Neither linked to the bank's performance nor efficiency, it has been a classic story of ad hocism and absence of any accountable policy guidelines. The taxpayers' money has been simply pumped in just to keep public sector banks alive. Such kind of capital infusion ideally should be need based. The available records, however, seem to reveal a cocktail of whims and fancies of executives in power that defies any logic. To put the story of bank recapitalization in context, capital is core to banks for expanding credit, earning interest, and growing the balance sheet so that they can drive these economic activities. The government is the majority owner of public sector banks in India. The statutory requirement in the banking companies under the Act of Acquisition and Transfer of Undertakings Act 1970-1980 and the State Bank of India Act 1955 ensure that the Indian government shall at all times hold not less than 51% of the paid up capital in such banks. In 2010, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs, after taking into account the trends of economy, had decided to raise government holding in all public sector banks to 58%. The objective was to create a headroom and enable public sector banks to raise capital from the market when they need without compromising their public sector character. Subsequently, in December 2014, the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs decided to allow public sector banks to raise capital from public markets through instruments such as follow on public offer or qualified institutional placement by diluting the government holding up to 52% in a phased manner. However, besides direct government holding, the Life Insurance Corporation of India holds significant stakes in public sector banks. As on 31st March 2017, Life Insurance Corporation's stake varies from 3.14% to 18.91% over and above a few public sector undertakings, including some of the peer banks who also cross hold public sector bank shares. This ensures indirect but complete government control over all public sector banks. Since March, the life insurance corporations stake in some of the banks have risen further. For instance, in State Bank of India, its stake has gone up from 8.96% to over 10%.